So, Sarvodaya's mission is to create a situation where you try to promote the individual awakening, family awakening, urban communities awakening, national awakening and the awakening of the world in these 6 dimensions. So, Sarvodaya movement's values are based on this awakening process where you try to help each other, sharing and caring to enable the community to satisfy their basic needs through a process of voluntary sharing. So, Sarvodaya has survived and also thrived for 62 years. That itself is testimony to the fact that it has adapted, because an organization of that scale and with that kind of deep mission wouldn't have survived if it hadn't adapted to the evolving conditions in the country. In the first 2-3 decades of the movement, there were certain services that Sarvodaya was directly providing to the community. For example, early childhood development, that is preschools. Now, that was an idea that Sarvodaya really translated into action in the early 1970s. And also we have had various enterprises which were running as part of training, vocational training. For example, we had woodwork, wood industry training, we had metal work. So, youth were trained for these trades. But later we realized that there were more demanding vocations that were that youth were attracted to. So, we had to evolve. So, some of the programs were stopped, and then now we are offering very modern information communication technology based training, mobile phone repairs and that kind of thing in the vocational training sector. And also the standards have also gone up. Those days our certificate given by Sarvodaya is valued as much as a standard certificate from a university. But today we have a government regulated accreditation system. So, we have adapted to that, and all our centers which provide vocational training are conforming to these standards, and they are the National Vocational Education Qualification Standards. And so, that's another example of adapting to the changing environment. Sri Lanka consists of largely rural communities still, even though there is urbanization, but relative to what's happening in other countries, we are not a rapidly urbanizing country. Of course, the urban influence goes to the villages rather than people migrating in large numbers to cities. However, with that rural character in our society and also in the economy, still the economy, the contribution to the economy, although it is centered in the western province when you take the GDP, but still the engagement of the population in productive activity is in rural areas. So, there are about 38,000 villages in Sri Lanka. And if you take say 70% live in those villages, anything that is happening in those villages really will decide the future of the country. And the poverty is also confined to rural areas and the plantation areas. So, that is at one level the practical importance of focusing on the grassroots communities. The second importance is that we believe, fundamentally Sarvodaya believes in a devolved system of governance and also to create resilient economies at the local level. Now, COVID-19 really proved that fact. No, when the national economy gets disrupted, it's the rural economy which is self-sustaining, self-sufficient will survive, and the production and services, even mobility is possible at a micro level. So, that is the model that we believe will provide a very stable base for social and economic development in the country. Absolutely, I think credit is very important, but it has to be a part of a larger financial empowerment program. So, actually we even didn't call it microcredit, we called it microfinance, because microfinance has a much broader definition. It's it includes even non-financial services being given to the people who borrow money. So, definitely credit is an integral part of it, but if you just look at the main problem is that people do not have access to finance, I do not think we agree with that. We believe that you need market information, you need capacity building, you need other form of technology based solutions for some of the promising enterprises. So, it has to be an integrated program and input, and definitely credit plays an important part of it. I think the most fundamental difference between Sarvodaya and other institutions providing microfinance is that it started with mobilizing the community in non-financial activities. So, you first develop a social base, an organized community, a community which has a representation, a democratic representation in the form of a community based organization. Then even when they start economic activities, they do not start with lending, they start with savings. So, the culture of savings is very important. Even the children were trained to save a little bit of money, and even organizing village fairs and things like that. So, that habit of saving is the base on which you start then later expanding into credit programs, and also they are then not dependent on external finances and indebtedness in the community. So, it was always the village's own savings being circulated within the village or with a village that is also in similar need. So, Sarvodaya pioneered what we call a horizontal sharing of savings based lending. So, whenever you have additional credit lines coming in the form of a formal financial institution like what is happening now through Sarvodaya Development Finance, it is complementary to the community's own resources being mobilized. I think that is very important. Otherwise, if you just focus on credit only, then I think we are contributing also the rural indebtedness, which is not at all healthy or not even compatible with the kind of economic empowerment that we aim for.